Okay, loves. Today we have two guests, and I'm so excited for this combination because what happens when a sex therapist and a midwife decide to write a book together? You get the cycle book. And honestly, you get the education that most of us never received, have desperately needed, and are only now in 2026 starting to demand. Laura Federico is an ASECT certified sex and relationship therapist, and Morgan Miller is a certified professional midwife. She's a birth center founder, a lactation consultant, and an activist. And together they wrote the Cycle Book. It's an award-winning, hands-on, like analog, right with your pen in the column, guide to understanding your hormones and your cycle all the way through perimenopause. This is not an app. It's an actual book that treats you like the intelligent adult who deserves to know what's happening in her own damn body. And of course, we're going to talk about hormones. We're going to talk about desire. We're going to talk about libido, perimenopause, and pop culture's spectacular failure to explain any of this accurately. And I promise you, this will be the sex ed conversation you needed and never got. Laura and Morgan, welcome to the Feminine Rebellion. Okay, Feminine Rebellion. We have Morgan Miller and Laura Federico, and we are going to dive into all things women, libido, desire, cycles. You wrote the book, The Cycle Book, and I guess before we even dive into the book, because I love more than anything in the world is collaboration. So like seeing two brilliant women, like forging, like working together, creating their magic, like it's alchemy. So I want to know before we even dive into what this book is all about, like how that happened. Like, were you friends before? Morgan, I'll let you go first. How would you describe like how this thing was actually birthed?
Yeah, well, I mean, the deep roots of it are that Laura and I met like back in the day in a very, very dingy, later condemned apartment in Brooklyn as, our early 20s figuring out life and before we were ever professionals in the world. So our connection goes deeper than work. It is definitely based out of friendship and like living in the world, dating, figuring out our bodies and like asking each other the same questions, realizing we're all wondering the same things. And, then we, of course, respectively went into our professions, myself as a midwife and Laura as a sex therapist. And the collaboration was, it was just completely organic. How could we not stay connected? And we realized our clients are having the same conversations that we were having with each other. And there's just like so much repetition and all the information we're all just aching for.
So was there like, and Laura, I guess I'll ask you this now, was there a moment, like I have these moments with girlfriends, right, that you can kind of point back to where it's like a late night conversation where you're like, we should write a fucking book. Like,
yeah. Yes. And I'm so glad that you are talking about collaboration because it's my favorite part of this. I could not do this by myself. I wouldn't dream of trying to do it by myself. I mean, when you're talking about these moments with your girlfriends, I can picture it. I have a vivid memory image of it where I turned to Morgan. We were on a holiday together, actually, and we were in this Airbnb together and we're sitting on the couch and I had been struggling with infertility, which is what led me to ask Morgan to like teach me everything that I don't know about my body. And she did. And she had this like iPad that could be used to do an at-home like ultrasound basically. And so she was like, we were like on holiday and I had gotten pregnant because Morgan like helped me so much. And she was like, here, let's just do like a quick ultrasound while we're like chilling here. And she just like brought out her equipment and we were just like looking, inside my body. And I was like, Morgan, it is so fucked that I got so lost on the way here. And you have like saved me with this knowledge about my body. We have to do something about this. And that's honestly when it all started. And I was like, Morgan, will you do this with me? And she was like, okay.
my God. And how long ago was that?
Let's see.
It was just yesterday and a lifetime ago.
5 years ago?
Yeah.
5 years? Yeah. Is that right? I'm like thinking about the age of my children.
So.
Like 5 years ago. Yeah.
Wow. And so were you like, so you were struggling with infertility, you got pregnant, and then you got pregnant again.
So I was struggling with what's called secondary infertility, which until I was coping with it, I didn't know much about. And so for many people, you get pregnant the first time with no real issue. And then the next time you're trying, and this is the kind of secondary category, you are, for whatever reason, having difficulty with conceiving. And so for me and my partner, it was unexplained infertility. And it was categorized as that secondary infertility. So there was nothing that anyone could point to that was contributing to the problems that we were having. In that kind of unexplained territory, they often are referring people into like the systems that we have in place, like, you know, the fertility, you know, sort of industry as we know it. And I got kind of lost in there. I didn't know how to advocate for myself. I didn't know how my body worked. I was relying on doctors that were often doing their best. Some of them, I have to say, were not, but many providers doing their best. And I really, really lost myself. I have PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder. And so that means that I have a sort of like hormonal sensitivity, essentially. That's like a very generalized way to describe it. And so the fertility medications made me really, really sick. And the doctors didn't really know how to respond to that. And so it was after all of this, truly, I was like, I was really struggling. And I finally came to Morgan. And, you know, within your friendship, you don't want to ask too much of people's profession, you know, like you want to keep it friendship. And I waited too long, honestly, to ask Morgan. And she was like, you should have come to me earlier. Like, let's figure this out. And she just filled in these like massive gaps in health education that I had about my own body, like sex education, yes, but like health education, like how my body worked, I did not understand. And I couldn't advocate for myself until I learned how. And after Morgan taught me, I found a reproductive endocrinologist who understood what I was talking about. And I got pregnant the first time she helped me years later. Yes, the first time I found someone who understood me. And she was like, great, let's do it this way, which was IUI without hormones. And I got pregnant right away.
That's not, so what was the information that Morgan gave you that felt like the game changer?
I feel like I'm taking us on a tangent here. Is that okay? We're like,
Totally.
we're like
so
that.
Good, Laura. I mean, it was the start of everything.
It's not a tangent at all, because I think for both of you, and this was actually how I was going to start the interview before we came here naturally, is that, you know, each of your own kind of journeys, you know, having, you know, infertility and PMDD and how it's taught you about the relationship between hormones and like a woman's sense of self.
Yes.
And like, this is really, to me, a story about women reclaiming power. I mean, these bodies that we live in, these bodies that we inhabit, that we just don't know anything about. It's like we've been brainwashed. And so I think this is not a tangent at all.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I appreciate that. And when you say brainwashed, like, tell me more what you mean by that.
Well, okay. So I'll tell my own story. So I was 19 and had never gotten a period. And I was having sex in high school and was not like practicing safe sex all the time with my high school boyfriend. And finally said to my mom, like, I think I need to go to the gynecologist because I don't have a period. And they diagnosed me with PCOS. I went on progesterone to get my period. No one ever talked to me. It actually, I, to this day, have now PCOS has a new name, right? As of like a couple weeks ago or something. But like, I don't even know what that means. I know some of my symptoms, but I don't actually know anything. I'm going through perimenopause, and like some of the symptoms that I'm experiencing right now, like I have always had like a beard that I have lasered and whatever. Like I have all these things that I think, because I've heard other people talk about PCOS, are related, but even in Boston, Massachusetts, and I haven't been asking the questions. So I feel like I haven't advocated for myself, but also it's in my chart. like it says I'm 50 years old and I have PCOS, or I forget the new designation, but so that's what I'm talking about.
Yes. Oh my God. Thank you so much. Also, Morgan, you have to do a quick like PCOS 101, and with the new name too for all the people listening, because yes, this is exactly my story. This is everyone's story that Morgan and I see coming through our offices. You know, when I got diagnosed with PMDD, it was explained to me through the symptoms, not through understanding like the function of what was happening in my body. None of the pieces around what was actually happening were ever expressed to me. And it wasn't until I was trying to get pregnant and couldn't get pregnant that I learned for the first time how to really understand when my body was ovulating, which is huge for PCOS, for PMDD, for so many things outside of fertility, because the hormonal shift around ovulation has massive implications for a lot of people. And just being able to know what ovulation means outside of the lens of fertility. Our bodies do things. We are not getting pregnant every single cycle. Many of us are ovulating every single cycle. We should be understanding what that is, what that means for relationships, for how we feel in our bodies, for our mental health, for our physical health, all of this, these hormonal shifts. And the menstrual cycle is like the building blocks for us to understand how our bodies operate in so many other parts of our lives. And to have never been educated around that, and even after receiving multiple diagnoses and not a single provider explaining any of it to me, it's truly mind-blowing that there's this kind of mystery, this like black box of information in our own bodies, which, given the right information, basic health information, would be totally unlocked for all of us. And what a difference that would make. Wait, I am going to actually stop ranting right now. Morgan, will you do like a PMOS 101?
Yeah. So what used to be called PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, is now titled polyendocrine metabolic ovarian syndrome. And it's a step forward for sure, because it's doing kind of what you were talking about, where it's starting to talk about overall health and not just the idea of like cysts on the ovaries, because that's one symptom of a syndrome. And they're mentioning like the metabolic system, which is really like the heavy hitter of it. Like people with this condition have a different metabolic system that has different needs, and the hormones respond differently, and different support should be set in place. So that's the focus. I still have qualms with the new name because it has ovarian in it. And it's just a full body metabolic condition. We should just be calling it that, in my opinion. By the time it hits the ovaries and starts to change function there, we're like way later down the pathway with it. And I think it does a disservice to us in, getting the attention we deserve to research and understand and study these conditions. Because like we know how tainted the whole medical system is and research is around women's bodies and women's healthcare. Like nobody studies women's bodies, nobody studies women's cells. We like just started to do that. And of the tiny percentage of like federally funded research that goes to these things, most of it is breast cancer. And then there's this tiny little category that goes to other stuff. And most of that is fertility related. And then everything gets left in behind. So we like don't know anything because we're not researching it, but it's because we keep reducing it to fertility and reducing it to like reproduction. And like, just like Laura said, like I ovulate all the time, and it completely changes my life to know what it means when my hormones are changing and what my body is needing and how I'm feeling. Like that is basic health information that has nothing to do with having children.
And if you were a man and you ovulated, we would know so much about it.
Yeah.
There would be billboards about what to do when you're ovulating.
Yeah.
You're like, guys,
correct.
You're going to, before ovulation, this is how you prepare your body. This is how much sleep you need. This is how much water you should be drinking. These are some of the things you should expect or could expect. This is how you should be taking care of yourself. So let's go there, Morgan. Talk about, let's just start with ovulation, because now I'm curious. I want to know everything. I wish we were sitting in my living room and give me the download. Like, what is what is happening to a woman's body during ovulation. I know the basics. The egg jumps out of the ovary and travels down the fallopian tubes and does or doesn't get, fertilized. But
Totally.
but what are the hormonal shifts?
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that women can look out for? What are the things you're tracking in the book?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the reason that Laura and I are really fixated on making sure people have awareness of that phase of the menstrual cycle, that ovulatory phase, is it's this really incredible pivot point in the cycle. So most people are used to tracking just one phase of the cycle. That's like the bleeding phase, like people are used to putting that on a calendar just so they have some convenience of like, I need to know when I need a tampon or whatever, and getting to know that rhythm. But there are these other phases in the cycle and they kind of overlap. But the first half of your cycle is follicular, where the body is basically preparing to do that thing where it releases an egg cell. And then at the midpoint in the cycle, there's this big shift with ovulation where that egg cell gets released. For the body to do that, there's a whole new cocktail of hormones that come on board and completely switch the way you feel physically, mentally, sexually, like how you're connecting, how your cognition is. Like hormone receptors are everywhere in your body, in every system. So with that shift comes a giant shift in your own sensations and sense of being. And after ovulation is, what more people are hearing about these days is that luteal phase.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see it on social media, #luteal, but it's basically the part where your body prepares to bleed again and start over. And that hormonal shift for a lot of people can exacerbate different symptoms in their body. So like Laura was talking about PMDD, that's a condition where people have really like a hypersensitivity to those hormones that are present. It's not that there's like an imbalance in hormones, it's just how your body responds to it. But many other people have what we call like a premenstrual exacerbation where, think outside of the reproductive cycle, like think asthma. We know that people have more asthma attacks in the luteal phase than they do in any other phase. They send themselves to the ER more often in that phase for that. So there's all sorts of conditions, whether it's metabolic or like thyroid related, dietary, digestive, that really shift in that phase. But if you're able to identify ovulation, you've got a heads up. You're like, I know exactly what's about to happen. I know how to set up myself. I understand why I feel different than I did yesterday. I understand how things may shift in the next couple of weeks for me. And even if you do nothing with that information, just having it is so grounding when you've gone through a complete potential identity shift in how you're feeling in your body and how you're thinking.
Yeah. I mean, you go from what's wrong with me to how do I take care of myself right now?
Totally.
Yes.
I mean, that's it. If you know this, there's a hormonal shift and I'm going to feel slower and, okay, in a couple days, I'm going to want to lay on the couch and I'm not going to beat myself up for it and tell myself what the hell is wrong with you. But that I'm going to give myself the time, the space, and, the compassion to just be with myself. I think this is this is so groundbreaking. And I can't believe that at 50 with, a diagnosis that I'm like, wait, what? I now need to buy this book for my daughters who are 21 and 22.
I wish someone would have taught me when I was that age. It would have changed everything for me.
Yeah. So let's jump ahead. You kind of dipped into social media and pop culture, but there is so much online and I think a lot of it is total bullshit. I mean, there's all these trends, you mentioned #luteal, which is funny, but some of it's really useful and a lot of it is bullshit. What is pop culture getting right and what are they completely missing?
There's a common critique about people who are getting information about their bodies on the internet, right? Like people are super furious with TikTok wellness influencers. People are really critical of people on Instagram who are selling something who are predatory. And, people who are vulnerable, are more receptive to that. Of course, totally agree that we need to minimize misinformation and be really aware of how to spot predatory influencers. However, the piece that I feel is always missed in this conversation is that the reason why people are turning to social media to try to get information about their bodies is because they are not being given any information anywhere else. So the problem is also like systemic and policy based, in my opinion. We need like better education. We need better real community support for people. We need to be continuing to work against the stigma so that people feel like they can talk about these things with the people that they do trust. We need to be filling in those gaps, because the reason why there's such a need and the misinformation is proliferating in the way that it is because we do not have that information anywhere else. So in some ways, pop culture is doing something great with, for example, perimenopause, right? Like every one of us in this middle, like, yeah, exactly, this midlife phase. I mean, I'm like beginning to tackle PMDD and perimenopause, which is like its whole just sort of like abyss of like non-information, you know? But it's great that this is a topic of conversation in pop culture. Like we are increasing awareness, we are spreading information, people are normalizing it. However, there's also at the same time this like, you know, menopause gold rush it's called, because it's just like, again, this huge gap in care. And anyone who's trying to make money is like, great, this is a huge vulnerable population of historically misunderstood, you know, kind of stigmatized people, and I'm going to sell them the newest version of snake oil, right?
Totally. I mean, this is even like doctors that I trust that are, you know, online, that have millions and millions and gazillions of followers. Like I was doing research for the show and I was like watching some of these reels, and the nighttime routine that this female OBGYN goes through includes like no fewer than 17 different steps and most of them are supplements that she sells under her own brand.
Yeah.
And I'm like, shouldn't we take a fucking blood test?
Yeah.
Like, shouldn't we be like, this is, and people are gobbling it up. Like I have friends who are anywhere from 45 to 60 who are like, oh, now I'm taking this for this and I'm taking this for this. And I'm like, do you even know what that is? Like, are we just like believing the influencers? And I'm sure like a lot of it's really valuable, but a lot of it seems like you should be visiting your own doctor or doing your own research before glomming onto it.
And it is so hard because there are doctors out there I mean, there's plenty of them that like there's, you know, back channel notes in your chart that are like, you know, they self-diagnosed on Google and like, you know, whispers about it in the back office. But like, I can't tell you how often I have clients walk in my door and they're like really well informed because of Reddit and TikTok. And they're like, I don't know, like this thing resonates with me. I think it makes sense. And then I get to sit there and like have a clinical background. I happen to nerd out on research on this stuff. And it's so freaking validating to be able to tell them, like, I agree with you. I think you actually did a really good job. Now let's figure it out together. And they got there faster. I was able to move through the visit faster because people are smart. They're in tune with themselves. And if we are equipped with good information, like we can deduce what to do with that information on our own a lot of the time. And it's not as hard to like navigate these broken healthcare systems where it's hard to even get in with a doctor and you get 5 minutes to talk to them. I think like people are clever, but it's very predatory out there. And so like keeping that critical thinking cap on while participating in it is really tricky.
And then taking it, I think like you mentioned, like the bridging the gap there is like taking the information and then going to your provider and saying like,
yeah,
you know, I read this thing, it really resonates. Like, can you check me out? Is this real for me? So Morgan, let's talk about some of the hormonal changes in a midlife body. Because this is like what all of my girlfriends are talking about, all of the people in my community. I think most women are experiencing some symptoms that they can't quite name, or they're naming them wrong, or they assume it's just like aging, right? I'm just like, aging. So what are the most common hormonal shifts that you see with your patients in midlife, and which ones surprise women the most when they like finally understand what's happening?
Yeah. I mean, I think like the most significant thing that people are figuring out with 2020 hindsight is the cognitive and emotional aspects of how those hormones fluctuate and feel in your body. Like we are realizing like perimenopause starts a lot earlier than the textbooks say. The true experience of fluctuating hormones for a lot of people starts in their mid 30s. And that's way before we're talking about irregular cycles. That's way before we're talking about hot flashes and night sweats and the more like overt signs. But when people are able to like start to put the pieces together and look back at these transitions of time and see, oh my God, this makes so much sense. I thought I was simply like aging into a new phase of life where my interests were different, and that all can coexist and be true. But the like systemic aspects of how you think and how you feel, I think is one of the big ones. One of the big like branding qualms I have with the menopause movement right now, which I like love a lot of it. It's so fabulous, but is this like chaos theory around hormones? You'll see it a lot where people are just like, you're a menstruating person and then you get to perimenopause and it's chaos. The hormones are all over, like you have no idea how to understand them or cope with them. So just like hold on tight, see if you can get through it. But the reality is there's like some pretty predictable patterns. You know, there's like a phase where periods get lighter and they get a little bit shorter. If you used to be a 30-day person, maybe you're a 28-day person now. Like those are all those early signs. And then there's these other signs where they get a little bit heavier. And then there's another phase where they start to be more spaced out and you have that off and on, like not ovulating, have different lengths of your cycles. Like there is some prediction in that. The disconnect is that if you haven't been taught how to understand what each of those hormones feels like in your body, then yeah, it feels like chaos. It feels unpredictable. But if you have that awareness that, you know, on average for people, they're, you know, 35 to 40 may feel this way and your cycles look different and your body feels different. 40 to 45 may feel this way and 45 to 50. Like there are some general trends. I think the other piece of it too is just that it's so individualized as well. So that it goes back to like people notice when something feels different to them and doesn't feel right. And that doesn't need to be prescribed by saying like night sweats. Like you don't have to have night sweats for that to be the thing. It might be, you know, how you're feeling at work, where your interests are, or what your connection to your friends groups are, and how much you're wanting to be around your family, things like that. The differences within your body, if they are not feeling good to you, then it is worthy to investigate seeing how you can seek out support and balance for that. And that's it. Like you don't need a blood test for that. You don't need, you know, a hormone saliva swab. Like that is a truth in reality in all of it with these fluctuating hormones.
I love what you said about like some of the cognitive piece. Like I think that just gets, I mean, it's starting to come to the surface, but I mean, I'm 50, I still have a regular period. It's shifted. I've never had a night sweat. But a couple of years ago, I was forgetting things. I just was forgetting things. And like my kids who are now 18, 21, and 22, but like were a little bit younger, were making fun of me. Like, oh my God, you're so forgetful. So I told my doctor and I went for like memory testing. And then I got sent for ADHD testing because I was explaining like I was a little bit less focused at work. So both of those things, I spent like 6 hours in like a psychoanalyst's office being tested for ADHD and memory.
Yeah. I mean, the like incidence of that age group being, you know, diagnosed or exploring things with ADHD or like autism spectrum, like all different things like OCD, like that people are like figuring out that I maybe have a different understanding of how my mind works. And they're only seeing it in perimenopause because there's this like unveiling that happens with those hormone shifts. And sometimes those are misdiagnoses. Like the amount of times people get thrown, like, take your SSRI, you're not, nothing's wrong with you. You're just depressed. Like that kind of, you know, disservice in the medical world is very, very real. But I think that cognitive shift becomes, it's like the veil is lifted and there's some focal points that become, they draw a lot more attention in these phases. And sometimes it's tricky if you're working with a provider who doesn't understand how overlapping and interconnected all of these things. And you just get sent from one specialist to another, to another, to another, not realizing a core treatment could be just understanding your hormones and seeking out some balance with
If
that.
someone just said to me, this is where you are in your perimenopausal journey, and that like this is normal, and try writing down your list of to-dos. I don't know. There's probably like a lot of really easy solutions to some of the things that I was experiencing.
Did anyone mention perimenopause to you at all throughout any of that testing, not any of the evaluation, anything?
Crazy.
No,
and this, I saw
48. It was 2 years ago.
Okay. The New York Times, I mean, maybe it was a few months ago, had an illustrated piece on menopause and perimenopause, and it had like a picture of a body, and like as you scrolled through the article, it showed different pieces of the body, and it discussed common symptoms of perimenopause, and it was like brain fog, memory issues, anxiety, panic attacks. And as it moved down, it was like heart palpitations, joints aching, and it goes through the whole body. And almost every body system is implicated in this description. And yet I see people all of the time. This is something that Morgan and I try really hard to offer to other providers through workshops and like any kind of collaboration. Like I see people all the time who have been diagnosed with anxiety, with panic attacks, diagnosed with depression. And when they get to me and we're doing an intake and trying to assess what's going on, I ask, because it'll be someone in their mid-40s, I ask about their menstrual cycles. I ask about how they've been feeling in other parts of their lives. And they've been like bounced around to many different people by that point in time. And I ask if anyone has mentioned perimenopause as a possibility to them. And the answer is always no. The same thing when I get clients, often people who have like unexplained physical symptoms end up in a therapist's office, because they're sort of put into a psychosomatic bucket and they're like, just go talk to someone. We don't know what to do with you anymore. And it'll be a similar thing. It'll be like heart palpitations. They've gotten all of this testing done. They are, wearing a harness monitor and checking everything out. There's nothing, there's no results there. And yet they keep talking about things feeling a certain way. And again, I'll be like, has anyone talked to you about perimenopause? And for me, that's the point where I'm referring someone to a reproductive specialist who I am lucky enough to know, right? I'm referring to someone to an OBGYN who specializes in menopause and is certified to do that. I'm referring people to reproductive psychiatrists who, again, are trained in this area. And people are coming back and they're like, it's perimenopause, And they've spent all this time being bounced around, feeling so worried. That's the other thing too, right? How scary to think there's something wrong. Nobody can figure it out, but I don't feel right. That is a terrifying experience. And it's horrible to be living through that. And it's really wild that we have even with all this conversation, we're all talking about this being like everywhere online and in pop culture and everything. And like, no one said anything to you about brain fog being a common symptom of perimenopause.
And I mean, it's not like, I live in Boston,
Yeah.
I don't live in the middle of nowhere. I have access to amazing healthcare. The best hospitals in the country are 4 blocks from my house. So that's what's so astounding to me. And I'm a smart woman and I study, my degree's in biology, so it's like I have the capacity and the curiosity to understand what's happening in my body. And yet, this just goes back to your book. I mean, let's talk about the book, like specifically, and how, you're taking women through their cycle and helping them take their power back. Morgan, do you want to speak to the layout of the book and that it's like, I'm such a paper person, so I'm just like addicted to the fact that it is just like my pencil, my fancy pencil.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it was so important for Laura and I to create like a beautiful product that we would want around and like want on our bedside table, want to carry in our purse, like have something that is like aesthetically not, I don't know, femme flowered like every other menstrual related product that's existing on the market right now. So that was a huge piece of it. But really the book, I mean, it's a book. It's the sex education we wish that we had gotten, giving you all that information that you deserve to have gotten a way earlier in life and making it really accessible where it can be, read front to back or just treated like a reference as well. But, it integrates full body. It's not fertility focused. There's a little bit in there. There's a little bit about birth control, but we're talking about like pleasure. We're talking about living in the world in 2026 and like dissociation and how it is to be in the world and be connected in your body. It's tricky, but it was really important for us to give people a like practical, actionable tool and guide to understanding their hormones. So a good deal of the book is actually tracking charts for people to use where they can grab a pen, mark it in the book, and start to understand how to pay attention to those physical biomarkers that represent the hormonal chemical changes that are happening in our body to give you grounding to investigate whatever it is that feels important to you. So maybe it's perimenopause. Maybe it's figuring out like, is this brain fog hormonally connected, or like, is it my life is too crazy and overwhelming and I should quit my job? Being able to understand if there is that connection or there isn't is so, so powerful. So there's, over a year's worth of tracking charts in there that are so beautiful and fun to fill out, where you get to like fill out a little bubble and customize it to whatever you're interested in. And then we created a way to like end the gatekeeping and make sure that people really understand that information they just logged. So there's a little worksheet right at the end of a cycle where you can go back and look at that data and break it down and understand like, where's ovulation, where's follicular, where's luteal, are these things corresponding? Does it not? Should I speak to a provider, or am I good to go with what I'm doing right now? I think Laura and I both as providers get so frustrated by some of the informational gatekeeping that can happen in the medical system. And like I was saying, when people are coming in and they're like researching on Reddit, they're like pulling up PubMed and getting deep into the data too. Like, people are smart. People know their bodies. No matter what, they're the expert in themselves. And so there's no reason they shouldn't be able to understand that information. It doesn't need to be deciphered by an endocrinologist. It's not that complex. It's truly pretty simple. It's just a disservice that you weren't taught it earlier. So that's really what the book is in its entirety. Is it's meant to be a resource and a reference, and then a practical, like, we will hold your hand through the process tool to understand what's happening in your hormones in your body.
So freaking cool. I know. I have to order multiple books and start handing them out to people.
I mean, that's why Laura and I did it, because we were doing shared clients where we were realizing that this work can't be siloed, and we didn't have a good tool to give our clients. There was nothing that existed. There's plenty of apps that are out there, but like, the research is strong. The apps are inaccurate. There's about a 21% accuracy on guessing these phases like ovulation. And I don't know how you feel, but 21% is pretty lame. And I'm not having my clients use that. Besides the like data protection and the reality that this is like all privately owned and not safe. Yeah.
I do not want to enter my information
Yeah.
into something that's not protected. I mean, and nothing online is protected. Let's be honest.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's really smart.
Yeah. Okay. Laura, I know I want to circle back to something that I know everyone who's listening is going to want to know about or hear from you: libido.
Yeah.
Midlife women and libido. Like, women are struggling. They're not talking about it, even with some of their closest friends. Like, women share it with me in the private coaching room. But, when someone has this like really significant drop, how do we begin to understand what is driving it? Like, whether it's hormonal, right? It's relational, it's psychological. Is it all three? Walk me through, I guess, how you think about sex drive.
Yeah. So I first want to say that there are so many reasons why people experience a decrease in libido. And no matter the reason, across the board, the way that people feel about that when I see them is a feeling like it's something that they're doing wrong somehow. Like there's something wrong with their bodies. There's something wrong with like them not being able to like fix this. Like they should be initiating more. They should feel like that, like, you know, the best version of themselves all the time. They should be wanting this in a way that maybe they did before or that they aspire to. And I just want to say that it is so, so, so normal to experience changes in libido. And it is not a permanent condition. It is not a permanent state of being unless that's your choice. Okay. So like, this is not something that we need to be as scared about as we are. This more scared we are, the harder this is to shift. So when you pose the question, like, where's this coming from and how do we know the origin of this? I think that the way that you're approaching even the question is the right one. What's happening psychologically? What's happening hormonally? What's happening in our life context? And what's happening with our sense of identity? What's happening with the type of sex that we're having? Is it the type of sex that we want to be having? Is the sex good for us? Is it the type of sex that we're going to want to prioritize or not? And we need to answer all of those sort of questions. We need to check in with all of those parts of ourselves. And often what I find is that, again, because the feeling is so oppressively, it's something wrong with me, people don't go into all of those categories. And what they're doing is saying it must be just hormones. And if I can only get the right amount of testosterone or whatever it is that maybe their friends are taking that's working for them, then maybe I can solve this. And that can be a piece of the puzzle for many people. But if we look at this more holistically, I want to know what is actually driving pleasure for you, like truly. What's happening when we're talking about self-pleasure? And that can be something like explicitly erotic, like masturbation, but it can also be like, what is your like go-to just by yourself thing that you're doing? Do you have any of those things in your life right now? And if so, like, please tell me more about that. I want to know about the times that women are in space that is only theirs, where they can be connected enough to their body to actually feel it. And if you don't have any of those times in your day, then I know that even the most perfect form of HRT is not going to solve the libido crisis that you are describing to me. Like, we have to be talking about all of these parts of a person's life, because if a woman, especially in this midlife stage for a lot of women where they are so pressed, they have often aging parents, they have children, they have careers, they have partners, they've been grinding for decades. Like, there's no space for a person to be connected to themselves, let alone like experiencing eroticism in a way that is going to feel the way that they want that to feel. I think actually this is why romantasy novels are filling like such a great space for women, because there's a container. One can read a book. One can say to the people around them, I'm going to read a book. Give me, 45 minutes or whatever. Everyone understands that. But that's one of the only ways that women are getting space to be creative, to be erotic, to like engage with something that turns them on. Like we're missing so much of the whole puzzle here. So I know that's not a super specific answer. I have really specific tips, if that's helpful, for ways to kind of come back into our bodies. Yeah. But if we're not addressing all of these pieces, we're not solving anything.
Agreed. I mean, it's a lifestyle thing. Like, we've built our lives like so full, so busy. There's no space to actually like sit down and like massage your shoulders or rub your feet with oil. Like, we're so disconnected from our bodies. I mean, I have friends who are, entrepreneurs. They're, building fucking companies, and they're like, I have no libido, but they're also like in kind of a shitty relationship. So then they leave the relationship and they want to fuck everyone they see on the street. And I'm like, it wasn't a libido issue. It was like a life choice issue. It was, so many things, but it's not always right, the hormones. So it's like, I guess what you're saying is we look at the whole picture. Like, what are you doing for yourself? What are you doing to come home to yourself? Who are your friends? Where do you find joy? Those sort of questions.
Absolutely. What is a way that you can create space for yourself to be present with your body? And if you haven't felt your libido in a long time, how do you create the right environment in order to feel that? And so for that, I would suggest that people set aside a period of time that is protected time where they get to read something, think about something, listen to something, watch something that they know is going to turn them on. If that feels approachable, and see what happens if you allow yourself to engage with arousal and desire in a self-specific way for a protected period of time on a fairly regular basis. You can also engage some really great mindfulness tools like a guided body scan, but don't skip over your genitals when you're doing that. There's a fantastic sex researcher named Laura Federico who's done really great research around this, and integrating those parts of your body, the erogenous zones, in the guided body scan type of way can make a really big difference for people who are feeling disconnected from their sexuality. So there's some really simple ways that a person can get back in touch with that. But the first thing you have to do is make sure you have protected space for that and the environment and context that's appropriate to facilitate that for yourself. If you have none of that in your life, no amount of foreplay, no amount of hormones are going to change that for you.
No amount of lube.
There you go.
You got it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So last question for both of you. And I'd love for each of you to answer this. For the woman who has been like living in her body for 40 or 50 years and maybe has never tracked her cycle, never connected her moods to hormones or had the language, what's like one thing you would have her do this week? So we'll start with you, Morgan.
I mean, I think a huge piece of why the method of cycle tracking that we offer to people works is because it is based on these mindfulness techniques that Laura is mentioning. And simply the act of pausing for whatever amount of time you can manage. I mean, I often tell people like 20 seconds. Like if you can give me 20 seconds a day, it can go really far. But if there can be a ritual of once a day, just to check in, how did I feel today? How do I feel? Do I feel present? Am I just flying through the motions and doing the things? Am I grounded? Am I in my body? Just paying attention to whether that happens or not for you and recognizing when it does. So using some form of writing that down, just check in a box of like, I felt comfort in my body today and it was there. Or you know what? It was a shit show and it was not there today. Just starting there can be so powerful in understanding how we can get back into our bodies to be able to start to listen to them and understand what they're communicating to us.
I love that. Just taking a beat to come back home to yourself. Like, oh, how am I feeling today? How did today go?
I love that too.
Feedback. I love it. Laura, what about you?
I would say ask yourself, what is one category of pleasure that I would be interested in knowing more about? Especially for people listening who are coping with a frustrating experience in their body or their mind, or coping with anything chronic. We learn to become attuned to the negative signals that we think we need to pay attention to. And of course we do. That's what helps us survive. But sometimes we can over-index on that and we lose the whole biofeedback of pleasure. And so I would say, like, ask yourself, like, what's one piece of pleasure? It doesn't have to be sexual if you don't want it to be. It doesn't have to be erotic if you don't want it to be. But what is one pleasurable experience that you would want to know more about? And if you feel interested, do some tracking around that. But that can be pretty life-changing to offer as a reframe for ourselves.
I love that. I love that so much. Wow. You two are amazing. I'm after this pod, I'm going to buy 12 of your books. Just, I mean it. Like, I'm just going to send them to all of my girlfriends because I'm excited to dive in actually and learn more about myself. And I'm excited to like hit up Morgan and learn more about what was PCOS and is now P something, something, something. And just what a pleasure to have you on the podcast. So, Feminine Rebels, buy the cycle book. Let's track our cycles together. Let's learn about our bodies. Let's take our power back. And Morgan and Laura, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, what a treat.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, Rebels. Peace out.